Don't get stuck or swayed into the hustle, toxic culture that you have to hustle your life away and you have to choose between being a powerful mama or a business owner. Today on the Rainmaker Family Show, we interviewed Kristen Boss, a 7-figure business owner. She's an author, she has a podcast, she's a coach, and I loved hearing her story about how she chose to step out of hustle culture and into purpose. I love this interview because Kristen is so candid. She's so vulnerable. She gave personal life experiences, all about when she first started out as being an entrepreneur, from things like her husband, her family, her friends not believing in her, to a place of almost burnout when she had 2 little babies at home, feeling like she just needed to hustle, 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 and then the money would come. And even when the money came, she said when she first made her first $1 million, she was just like unsatisfied. And we talked about mindset and the importance of this. And I just loved Kristen's transparency. And she talked about things that are on mine and Steven's heart. And I just know that you are going to love this episode.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thank you. So glad to be here with you guys.
Oh my goodness. Well, we are so excited to dig into the wealth of knowledge that Kristen carries. You guys, this is going to be a powerful episode. If you're an entrepreneur, which you should be if you're listening to this show, there's going to be some powerful gold nuggets for you in this show. So, Kristen, we wanted to dive into something that just immediately we resonated with the Rainmaker family, which is the hustle culture. And coming against the hustle culture, you can call it the toxic hustle culture, leaving it behind and really leaning into purpose, profit, without the scarcity, without the pressure, without all that stuff. Like, I feel like when people start saying those words, because we've totally been there, I feel like you can't say those words without probably have been succumbed to the hustle culture previously. So yeah, how did you experience that hustle culture and what helped you break through out of that?
Well, my last name is actually Boss. So you can imagine with a last name like that, I hustled myself to death. Like literally, I really hustled myself to the point of burnout. If there was like a poster child for, the girl boss hustle culture and how deeply I had bought into that, you would find my picture next to it. I had, the journals, the swag, the merch. Really what I was buying into was the idea of like, if I could just put my nose down and grind I had this story, like, if I just give it everything for a year, I'll escape this painful reality that I'm in and everything will be better and I'll get there. And I very bought into, I'm even going to call it it was kind of bro marketing culture. It was very like, how I saw things done. And this was in 2018. So at the time I had a newborn. I had my daughter was 5 months old. My son was 20 months old. My kids are 15 months apart. And so there I was just in a real place of financial scarcity in my life. And so I thought, this is it. This is the answer. So I bought the hustle culture hook, line, and sinker. It was very lucrative for me. I was just like, okay, I'm going to like hustle my way to this financial abundance. And really what I was doing was I was just escaping pain in my life, thinking like it's just going to be so much better there. And so I remember there was like, and at the time I was also a hairstylist working behind the chair. So my life for a time was I would wake up, I don't know, I'd wake up, get my kids ready, leave for work. I'd be gone at work from 9 to, 4 or 5 on my feet, come home, do dinner, do bath time. And then I'd be on my laptop from 8 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning and wake up and do it again. And eventually it was just, I became a shell of myself. And not only that, I wasn't sitting in the promised land like I thought there was. I was like, I thought I was going to hustle my way to like cash everywhere. And there's not cash everywhere. I feel, I had adrenal fatigue and I was depressed and I'll never forget. I was just like, this isn't worth it. I can't do this. This isn't for me. And everything had suffered. So that's when I realized I don't think hustle is actually the answer. And so I went on kind of a journey of purpose. And that's what my book's about, Pivot to Purpose.
Yeah. I love that title of your book that you just mentioned, Pivot to Purpose, Leaving the Toxic hustle culture behind. And so how did you pivot to find that purpose and have a good rhythm?
Well, here's the thing with hustle culture, it's really addictive. It's very much you're running on adrenaline and cortisol and a lot of quick wins. And so um leaving the toxic hustle culture first when I hit massive burnout, it was I would just call it my day of reckoning. My husband and I, we are roommates. We're ships passing in the night. I am unable to feel emotionally present for my children. Um, so for me, it was my body gave out, my mental health gave out. So I kind of went on a journey of okay, no one's talking about this anti-hustle culture. No one's talking about it. And this was in 2019. And so I was just like, what if there's a way to do this differently? What if you don't have to do this whole, you know, hustle 24/7 culture, grind it out? What if it doesn't have to look like that? And so I was just like, what if I actually started working from a different place? What if I worked from joy? And what if I actually started having gratitude for what I have right now? Because I realized so much of hustle was rooted in scarcity. And I tell people, 'cause a lot of people, when I tell them being anti hustle, they think like, oh, like not working. And then they kind of move into this apathetic, it'll just results will fall out of the sky. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Hustle is not the activity. It's not the actual work. It's who you are being in the work. And I was a very scarce, desperate, scared person. So I actually just thought instead of like trying to hustle my way out of a reality that I find painful, what if I could find joy and gratitude in my reality now? Because then it might actually remove this pressure I'm putting on myself all the time to like get out of this place as quickly as possible. And like the very first thing I had to do was practice gratitude and being like, how is this life I'm living so perfect as it is right now? Like when we're a paycheck away. I'm, like, getting teary-eyed telling you this because, like, I had to get to that point where I was like, "Money can't fix this. This is an inside job first." It's like purpose is an inside job, and then we work from a different place, but hustle is usually from a place of, like, lack of worthiness, lack of, um, knowing who you are apart from your work, and so, I had to do that healing work with myself, and to be honest, like, I tell people, I'm like, "I'm a recovering hustler," like, I'm always gonna have those hustle tendencies just because that's who I am, so I'm always having to just, keep that in check, so to speak.
Yeah. I think sometimes in culture too, especially like women, it's like we're told to go run the business, but also be the mom and also cook the meals and also like all of the things. And I think sometimes um it's like you have two paths. You can either hustle or do nothing and just like um sit on the couch, and it's just like, no, you can be, and I'm sure, and maybe Kristen, you can speak to this in a second. Like for me, I have days where I am super focused on business and I know that my boys are being well taken care of. They're doing their thing and I am in business CEO mode and I am like, hey, I've got a few hours left in my day. I need to get my task done so that I can like go downstairs and be fully mom. And there are, I really have to like carve things out. And I think you can totally have both. And so I would love to hear even like what you have structured in your days so that you can be like that high achiever who, you just said that you have like that personality type. Like I feel like I'm always created to be an entrepreneur and driven, yeah, and be in business with Steven. And for me to not participate in the business and do things is like turning off a side that I was created to be. And so that's also not healthy either. So I don't know if you can speak to that as like structure or, yeah, because there's the tendency to want to sneak back into that hustle.
Definitely. One of the things I'm always telling my students is to remove the nooks and crannies mentality from your business, like not work your business in the nooks and crannies of your day. And a lot of moms who are building businesses at home with littles, they're like, I'm gonna do a little bit of, work during nap time or snacks or a little here, a little there. And we think that's productive, but actually it just makes you feel like you're working all the time and everything just starts to bleed into each other. And sure, I think there's seasons for that, but what helps me is I create very clear boundaries around my work time and my mom time. So when I'm in my work, I am fully in my work. People ask me all the time, like, do you suffer from mom guilt? And the answer is truthfully no, because when I'm in my business, I am in my business. I'm very focused. And then I can, because when you've learned to stop hustling for your worth, you feel peace putting your phone down. You feel peace stepping away from your computer. You start to understand, like, hey, the work is always going to be there and that's fine. But now my work is to, once I walk out my office doors, I'm going to go put on my mom hat. So when I'm mom from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock every night, you can find me doing homework, taking my kids to dance lessons, doing bedtime routines. Like, I'm fully mom. And I had to, like, as my business grew, I had to put more parameters in place. Like, I found myself, like, checking my Slack channel and see what my team was up to and those things. And so I eventually had to tell my team, like, hey, between the hours of, especially between the hours of 5 and 8, those are sacred hours in the morning and at night, 5 to 8 a.m. and p.m. If I'm not going to respond, I'm going to be out of office. And so I trained my team to understand that Kristen's in her mom mode too. So it took practice. I will say it took practice.
So cool. I mean, I think there's a lot of people desiring this shift. I think it's really interesting because like hustle culture and like setting goals, right? Setting goals is one of those things that like, yes, we want to set goals and we want to look forward to the future and we want to, have hopeful goals. But there's almost an element of scarcity sometimes. There's a temptation of scarcity. Like, I don't have this yet, or when I reach this, it's going to be awesome. And so shifting from that scarcity mindset to the abundant mindset, you mentioned gratitude. What other things did you do in that season to really build that abundant mindset around, I'm gonna focus on where I'm at, where, the joy in the moment, like those things you mentioned. Gratitude was one of them. Is there anything else that you really felt helped shift you? Because I feel like that mindset shift takes some time, like going from total like focus on lack to focus on abundance.
Oh, it took a lot of intention for sure. Another thing was intentionally working as if I had a deadline while also releasing the timeline of like the expectation of like it should happen in a year. And this is when people get really um emotionally exhausted, I'm going to say, in their entrepreneur journey, is when they had this expectation of like, I thought I would be here at this point by now. I'm constantly hearing from a lot of newer entrepreneurs, I thought I'd be further along, and that's just laced with so much judgment. So for me, I believed in the inevitability of where I was going, and I released my timeline, and I was just like, I'm not sure how long it's going to take, if it takes 5 years, if it takes 6 years, but like this point, like I'm going to really deeply enjoy this part of business. And, it started with, I'll never forget, for example, uh, I was planning my first launch, and I ran this like free, 5-day challenge in a Facebook group, and 250 people were in the group. And I literally have this picture still. It's a picture of me taking a selfie in a mirror with a little Post-it note on the mirror that says, congratulations on your 20K launch. And to me, that was like the most mind-blowing money I could possibly ever imagine. And so I was like, I created this workbook. I was like, this is so amazing. And I was going to sell this, I think it was a $299 course on the end of it. I was like, perfect. Like, so many people are going to buy this. And I had 6 people buy, and 3 of them were my close friends. And I'm pretty sure they were pity purchases. Like, oh, well, you tried so hard. I'm going to buy from you. And it was $1,600 is what I made. Maybe so it was 8 people, $1,600. And I could have very well let that totally destroy me and be like, this isn't the $20,000 launch I had pictured. This is now, my future is so far away. I was in the like, holy crap, I made $1,600 online. This is bananas. And then I also have been blessed with the gift of stubbornness. So for me, I'm like, that's fine. I'm going to figure this out. I'm just going to keep going. But I was just celebrating everything I did. And it actually was 3 months later that I had my first 20K month. And so like it eventually happened, and people tell me, they're like, wow, your business exploded overnight. I'm like, kind of, but there was a lot of like guts, gritty, hard. Nobody saw. I'm like, listen, there's 5 courses I launched you have never heard about that failed abysmally. But most people are like, their first failed launch, they're like, this isn't meant for me. I'm like, oh no, I am the queen of failed launches. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that one you said is so powerful, releasing the timeline. Because I think we get in these like just mental, oh, it's a year. I should have a goal that's like a year. Like it's just like we get in this like, I need to hit this by this time or this quarter. And I love that how there is power in our words and declaring, hey, I'm gonna have a $20,000 lunch. It did happen, but you release the timeline a little bit. You give yourself grace in the process, and you're grateful for any movement. Any dollar that comes in. It is. I mean, selling to, you said, sold to 3 friends, but selling to 3 strangers is huge. Like it's huge. We're celebrating, and way to have that like mindset shift, because that's what keeps you going, not like keeps you going back. Like you said, people sometimes they focus on what they don't have. I didn't get the 20K unless they quit. But if you focus on that little, it multiplies. This is such like in alignment with what we are always saying in Rainmakers. It's just like focus on what you have, it'll multiply. It'll multiply.
Yeah. I'm also going to add this too. It's worth asking yourself, take that goal that you're working towards, and maybe, we'll take my first goal of a 20K month. Like that just blew my mind. I'm like, I can't even imagine that kind of money. And I want you to think of, because most people, they're just like, yes, I want the goal. But honestly, it's not the goal. It's how we think the goal will make us feel. And so what I tell people, I'm like, okay, so picture yourself having that. What's different in your life? What's different? And they might say, well, I feel less stress. I feel peace. I feel a sense of security. And the best thing you can do is what I would say is you honestly, your mindset, you bring it with you wherever you go. Like no money changes your mindset. Like an external circumstance cannot change your mindset. And so if you're scarce with $200 a month, you're going to be scarce with $2,000 a month. And like your scarcity magnifies. But also on the other hand, like your gratitude magnifies if you can learn to have that mindset. So I tell people, okay, so you feel like you're going to have this gratitude and security and those things. And I say this, how can you have that emotion right now with what is currently in your bank account right at this very moment? And how can you practice that? Because if you can't have that with this amount, I guarantee you're not going to have it with that amount. And I'm going to have a really honest moment and say, I remember when I hit $1 million, I was actually depressed because it was like waking up on your 30th birthday or your 21st. Like, remember a birthday that was really cool? Maybe it was your 18th birthday. You're like 18th. Okay, we'll do that one. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like a real adult. It's going to be so exciting. And you wake up and you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't look different. I don't feel different. Nothing has actually changed. And that was what happened when I hit $1 million. I'm like, I don't feel different. I don't feel different. This didn't bring me the peace I thought it would, or just didn't. I mean, yes, it's nice, but that's when I had to realize, oh, these stories I had around this, it's not actually true. So you have to kind of work on, I don't know, making that peace with yourself before the money ever comes, because it's not, money can't bring you the peace. And I'm sure you guys tell your people that too.
Oh my
So
God.
important.
Yeah, it really is so important. It's just like, you have to get your mindset healthy and whole with whatever dollar amount, and yeah, there's a lot I could say about that.
I know. Man, I feel like, yeah, and even if you do, like, I think hitting those milestones too, there is sometimes a moment of, wow, I did it, but I'll tell you, it does wear off. Like, even if like you have that, it wears off pretty quickly. And so focusing on the inner game is so important. If you're going to, I think for us, like generosity was one of those things. Like we learned that like if we weren't generous when we had little, we wouldn't be generous when we had a lot, And it's actually like people think, oh, it'd be so much easier if I'm making $5 million to tithe to my church, and it's not, because the number is so much, it's like, it's the same, it's the same mindset. If you can't do it 1,000, you won't do it with them, like it's if you can develop it down in the valley, you'll be able to do it on the mountain, and that's really where it's who you become. And I know, you said you're in the process of really scaling the business and preparing for where it's going. And I feel like it's one of the most transformative things personally. It's so funny how business just like totally stretches you as a person, and develops you as a person. And some of those jumps from 6 to 7, 7 to 8, they've been one of the hardest transitions, not just in the business, but just like for us, for our marriage, for our communication, for who we had to become to carry that, And so I love the post you made on Instagram. You were going through, looking back, like things I wish I knew before I became an entrepreneur. I feel like these are so good. whether you're considering entrepreneurship or you're listening to the show, you're a seasoned entrepreneur. These are just such good things. I wanted to just hit a couple of these because I feel like I can just sense there's stories behind each one of these.
Yeah.
Can
I hit one first? Because I love this. I love that we call this out, and I am a firm believer in investing yourself, like financially. You said one of the things was don't expect change by consuming only free content. So I would love for you to
call out the podcast.
Calling out and stuff. And we can have podcast listeners that are in our program, or maybe you've been listening for a while. Okay.
We were there for so many years.
Yeah. And
we were freebie people for so many years.
You could just call me Bootstrap Boss. I was like, I'm going to bootstrap everything with free content. Again, because I was in this very scarce place. And I think I was like the free content person. Like I think I'm still purging my email list from like freebies I just kept getting years ago. Like if somebody had a free, like here's 5 ways to grow your audience. I got that freebie. I was a webinar queen. I was a freebie queen. I was a funnel hacker. And so that was me for a while. And then I finally was like applied to work with a coach. And then he told me how much it would be. And I was like, well, my dreams are dead. Like, it's just no way. And so I was just like, okay, I'm going to like, and I get this psychology because so many of my students have this psychology as well. And this was me. So if you are like the bootstrap boss out there where you are like the free content person, you are selling yourself so short. And I want to just tell you, being somebody who's in your shoes. So I heard this coach, I heard the price, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like, okay, I'm going to scrap up the money to save up to work with this coach. And so I was selling furniture on Facebook Marketplace. I was doing like $60 an hour coaching calls to whoever wanted it. I was like, I can help you. I can help you. I was making these little like $1,000 offers that like, it's just failing abysmally. And like, but every time I would scrap money together, like I'd make this nice little pile of $1,000 out of the 10,000 I needed to save to get with him, to work with him. And so I was like, okay, I got $1,000. And then I have 2 kids and 2 dogs. And so I'll never forget, like my dumb dog decided to eat deer poop. And it was like a $800 vet bill. And I was like, there, and it was taken from my future pile. It was taken like the money that tiny little pile of $1,000 that I worked so hard for my future. I just keep visually thinking of the opening scene in the movie Up, where they're like, they have their little adventure jar and everything in life keeps happening. They keep smashing the adventure jar with the hammer and like, it costs all the money. And that was me. I had like my future jar and I kept smashing it with the hammer with like life. It was sick kids, sick dogs, flat tire. It was just gone. And so finally, I'll never forget, the coach finally came back and was like, Kristen, I can help you, 6-week offer, $2,000. And I was like, I don't even know where I'm going to get this $2,000 from. But I finally realized like, I'm literally in a hamster wheel, not actually making any forward progress in my life. I heard someone say like, this is just writing a check to go faster. I was like, okay, like I literally have nothing to lose. I'm going to do this. And I put $2,000 in a credit card. And my husband and I had both been like, you don't put money on a credit card. This is terrible. All these things. And let me just tell you, it was 3 months after that I had my first 20K month. And I just wish, I'm like, gosh, where would I have been had I just started a year earlier and I got out of my own way? So for me, it was like, the moment I decided to stop consuming free content is when I actually decided to take myself seriously. So that's why I'm like, you can't expect to build a dream on free content. Sorry, friends. Tough luck.
Yeah, we tell our people, you can take a boat there, or you can take a private jet, right? And like there's different options, or you can swim, right? Usually swimming there is the free option. Like you might get there, but it's going to be a lot harder and it's going to be a lot slower, you know? And so I love that, like cutting a check to buy speed all day. And it took us a long time to learn that ourselves. Our first investment was just a conference we went to. And we were just like, it was just like, why didn't we do this sooner? And then I think we did a couple courses, did some mentorships, did some masterminds, you know, and once you see the ROI on investing in yourself, it's powerful. There's another one I saw in there that I feel like is so common. We hear this a lot in our group, even people that join our mastermind and they're still encountering this in their life. You said, one thing I wish I knew is most people will question you or try to talk you out of it, especially in the beginning, ignore them. Tell us about this, because you probably see this a lot with your students as well.
So much. I would say the first year of your journey, you have got to be super protective of your dream. Don't tell anybody. And it's so tempting because I see people like want to make a post and they're like, I'm doing a new thing. It's like, no. Don't announce. Don't tell anybody because in the early stages of building your business, you are also simultaneously building your belief in the possibility and the possibility of the goal or the possibility of a business. You're building evidence for yourself. So when you're in that really fragile phase of belief, you have to be extremely careful of what opinions you let in. And to give you another example, of my story, I remember this was like while I was still Bootstrap Boss with my free content, I decided to tell someone I looked up to, a highly educated person who had his doctorate, who knew us. And I was like, I'm going to launch this coaching business and this is how I'm going to help people. And he looked over at me and he said, what makes you qualified to do that? And I felt so sick in my gut. And for 6 months, his voice bounced around in my head and I didn't do anything. For 6 months, I let that one opinion stall me. And so it's why it's so important to expect people to not get it. I'm like, don't, expect people to understand your unconventional decisions. Like people who live a conventional life, don't expect them to understand your unconventional decision making. And just understand like, what is the source that this is coming from? Like, are they living the life I want? If not, the opinion does not matter. But in that, it feels very fragile, especially with the family member. My family didn't get it. They thought I was doing something crazy. And it took them a long time for them to come on board. And I had to actually get to the place where I'm like, okay, so what if my family never comes on board? Then what? And I had to be okay with that. So yeah, you got to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. We see that a lot with our people and even us, but it is usually the loved ones because those are the ones that speak, you want help. I feel like I want their opinion. I want to, but yeah, if their source is so important. They have no experience with this thing. They have, they haven't gone through what you've gone through to dig into this thing and do the research. It is really hard. What would you say to someone who, because we're all about like, we don't want to just build the business and neglect the marriage and neglect the kids, right? I think there is something about getting the spouse on board, right? Like, how do you have that conversation? Because like we have people even posting in our group right now, I'm doing this business, but my husband's like, he's not on board yet, And I know it can take time. And some people are like, just build it. And like, he'll come around, which we have seen. And then the husband's like, okay, you're right. And like all this stuff. But for having that conversation and like bringing, someone into unity in their marriage around something, I know, what advice do you give to people? Or I don't know, when you jumped in entrepreneurship, I know some family poo-pooed it, but how was your husband in the process? Like, how did you guys do that?
I'm so glad you asked this question because it's so valuable because, my demographic that I serve is mostly women. And so when they're making an investment decision or taking their business seriously, the number one thing I hear is like, well, I got to go see what my husband says, or let me make sure he's on board. And this is twofold. I believe there is, and this is going to be ouchy for whoever hears this and know it's with love, but I think a lot of times women default to their husbands because they are afraid to own their decision of trusting themselves and saying, I believe in me. I want this. So they go to their husband in this quiet, kind of meek, like, hey, I'm thinking of this thing. Can I do it? I don't know, but it's going to cost some money to do it. And I think maybe I want it. I'm like, I wouldn't be sold. If this was Shark Tank, I'd be like, no, I'm not giving you the money to do this. But they go and then if the husband says like, oh, no, babe, there's just no way. Suddenly she has the out. It's like, oh, it's not me. It's not me that decided I couldn't do this. My husband told me no. So it's like she gets to hide behind the husband. And that's the ouchie is I think some women hide behind their husbands because then if I could just blame him, it's not me instead of, okay, I like to view it as like your partner is also your investor. So go to him as if you would an investor. And And especially I see a lot of women, if they aren't bringing an income to their home, I can see why they're like, no, I'm taking his money and his things, and I don't want to do, I feel bad. And it's like, you have got to step up. The first person you have to sell is yourself. Like, don't even talk to your husband until you're first sold out on like, hell yeah, I'm doing this. I'm all in and I'm going to make this work. And that's the energy I came to my husband in. I was so hungry. And it was about that $2,000 investment. I knew he would have like a lot of hesitations and red flags with a $2,000 credit card purchase. And I was like, listen, I'm going to do this and I'm going to prove you wrong. Like, whatever, I'm so determined to prove you wrong. Whatever you think, if you think I can't do this. And my husband was like, he didn't understand. To this day, I'm like, babe, did you ever think the $2,000 investment would bring us here? He's like, no, never. I had no idea. I didn't even know what you were doing. I didn't understand the coach. But what he did was he bought my belief in me. Like, in order for me to sell him on my future, I had to first be sold out myself. And he bought my certainty. He's like, okay, $2,000, here we go. And a month later, and just so people can kind of see how this worked, was I was building my belief that I am somebody who gets a return on investment on the investments I make, while also showing him like, hey, I can do this, and proving him. And so that month, I made $2,000. I broke even on my investment. So in my mind, I'm like, I have proof of concept. I am now somebody who makes the full return on our investment. And then the very next month, I signed a contract with a coach for $12,000. And I didn't tell my husband, so maybe I don't recommend it. I told him after the fact. But for me, I'm like, I'll make this back. It's not a problem. And then I think that same month I had signed like $20,000 with like 8,000 for a mastermind, 12,000 for a one-on-one coach. And at that point, I had only broke even. But for me, I had enough proof of concept that I am somebody who makes a return on her investment. And so with this whole husband thing, I'd just be like, first of all, how can you own this decision fully for yourself? And like, I always ask women, they're like, let me talk to the husband. I'm like, before you do that, what do you think? What do you want? Like, what are your thoughts about this? And oftentimes most women, they don't give themselves the opportunity to ask, what do I want? What's important to me? Like most women, especially moms, they're used to defaulting to everybody else's opinion. So actually owning their decision, especially for investment, feels very big. So that's usually where I'm telling people, I'm like, well, what do you want first? Let's sell you first. Let's not even introduce the husband. That's obstacle number 2. Obstacle number 1 is you.
That's so good. Like, you have to be so fired up, so sold on, I can do this and I'm going to do this. I love that story you shared about your husband. I feel like one time, and it wasn't necessarily a big coaching program or something like huge monetary that I was doing, but I remember when we were in the wedding industry for a while and I was wanting to do a specific type of photo session, and we were traveling. And I set it all up, and it was an investment to like rent the space and get the model and hair and makeup and all of these things. And I knew that it would lead to more work and like booking more jobs and things. And I remember like talking to Steven about it and like having like, I'm going to do this thing and all this. And you kind of like, you were down because we've always been supportive of each other, but I could tell that you like weren't super stoked about it. It was like taking time away from our vacation and things. And I just remember looking and turning to you and being like, I've supported you in all of these adventures and all of these different things that you've wanted to do. Like, I'd really love for you to support me in doing something that like right now isn't paying me money, but I'm super like fired up about. And obviously, like, I think you can turn that into anything, whether it's going to bring you money, or if it's just like a passion thing that I like, it fires me up to be in this dance club and you need to watch the kids one a night a week so I can go to dance class or whatever it is. You know what I mean? You said it so well, like, moms, we are so used to so many other people's opinions about what we should do and helping around. It's like, no, like, this is my time to like stand up and do something that I want to do. So I love how you gracefully interwove that, you know?
And for anyone who's listening who is in the middle of that right now, and you're like, I should have this conversation, just from the other side of like a couple that's really worked through it, and it sounds like you guys have as well, it gets way easier. You know, like you build so much trust in each other where, you know, like Chelsea saw the house we're sitting in the morning, like we put an offer on it. It was like, that's our house, you know? And I was like, sure, man, let's go, you know, let's go look at it. And then like, for me, it's like, you know, vice versa. Like, I'm like, all right, so let's do this thing with this guy. It's $50,000, you know, like, so you build levels of this thing. It might start with a $99 course. It might start with, you know, a coaching program. It might start with investing in inventory for your business or whatever it is, right? So it could start anywhere, but you do build this like trust with each other, which is so cool over time. But it comes down to you. It comes down to you. Sell you first, then sell the person on you and your beliefs, and then show them. I feel like the thing that can come up in these conversations is like past business trauma of like, I tried this thing and it failed. Or like even with the spouse, the husband's like, babe, like I understand you really want to do this, but you told me to never let you do things like this again because of this failed thing that you just did a year ago. Like we have a lot of people come to our world who try something and failed. We don't love that word because, you know, failure is really when you stop.
You learned.
Yeah. Yes, learn. But like, yeah, how to for someone who, you know, is kind of struggling to believe themselves because they kind of have this past trauma of like, I did this thing and that's resonating in their head. I mean, you kind of said you're the queen of failed launches.
Oh, I'm a poster child of this one too. So funny that you guys were in wedding industry. I was as well because I was a hairstylist. So I had like 500 to 1,000 weddings under my belt. But when we had moved to Colorado Springs, you know, I had to start my clientele all over. And so, but I had tried all these ventures. Like I started in the salon, I had a clothing boutique and like I went and bought all these clothes and a lot of inventory and I spent like $3,000 on clothing and I broke even. It was great, but like it didn't make any money. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to like coach hairstylists. And I had like all these flyers made out and I'll never forget. I was like sitting on the couch with like all the flyers and I was like, I feel like such an imposter right now. Like here I was, like, I had this wedding business. I had this other thing like, and I also felt like it wasn't just my husband who saw it, but I felt like social media friends had seen me like try all these things. Like they'd seen me do social selling and they've seen me like, you know, try selling. I was just always selling something. I was just trying to figure it out. So there was kind of like, yeah, there was kind of like this shame that creeped up of like, oh, Kristen, people are going to see that you're launching another thing. So there was a little bit of shame of like, I'm a person who launches things and I'm not a person who has like all this success. And so I could have let that like that shame really take over and keep me from taking the action, but what was louder than shame was hunger. I was like, I don't even freaking care. I'm so hungry for this that I don't care what people think. And I had to get over what I thought first. Yeah, shame was there for a little bit. And I remember, bless my husband, he said something. He's like, go fail. You have my permission to like go out, go big, go fail. That was before we invested. That's when he's like, no, you can't fail. You got to get your money back. But this was like, he's like, babe, just go for it, go big. And I think I needed to hear from him that like, it was okay for me to try another thing. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But I tell people, I'm like, listen, out of all these little things I tried, it's what shaped my success today. Like having the clothing boutique, being a hairstylist, being the, you know, a wedding stylist, all those little things I was doing on the side, like it all served. It all served. All of it poured into this, right?
Yeah, nothing is wasted. That's so good. Nothing's wasted in your journey. I love that. All. Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for being on the Rainmaker Family Show. I know you mentioned a book. You have your own podcast, which is amazing. So where can our listeners go if they want to hear more from you, see what you're up to, maybe buy your book?
Yeah. So my book is Pivot to Purpose, Leaving the Toxic Hustle Culture Behind. You can find that Barnes & Noble or Amazon. And then my podcast is The Kristen Boss Show. And you can just it's The Kristen Boss Podcast. That's where you can find me. And if you want to say hi on Instagram, give me a follow. It's at The Kristen Boss. And so that's where they can find me.
Awesome.
So good. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Hey, if you are not a part of our Rainmaker Mastermind, we have a new opportunity for you to book a one-on-one strategy call with one of our Rainmaker coaches.
If you want to get a call with them, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us to build a business that allows you to have time freedom and financial freedom, you can get that call at makeItrainmama.com/podcast. That's makeItrainmama, MOMMA.com/podcast.